Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here for week 5. I can't believe it's week 5 already. I feel like the time has just flown by. So as you know, your final presentations are approaching. So this week and next week, we'll spend some time preparing for that. Today, our special guest speaker will discuss preparing for presentations, and then Lynn is going to give you some assignments specifics. So I am very excited for today's webinar, and it's my privilege to introduce Mr. Jay Brown, the Chairman and Managing Director of Hayat Brown, an engineering and advisory firm based in Washington, D.C. Mr. Brown received his bachelor's degree in economics from the University of California, Santa Cruz. He then went on to pursue a Master of Public Administration at the University of Washington. He is a certified commercial investment member, CCIM, and has the Project Management Professional PMP certification. Hayat Brown, the company, is involved in planning, construction, operation of civil and social infrastructure projects, and commercial real estate development. Mr. Brown's expertise lies in supporting clients in strategic, transactional, and public-private real estate services. Mr. Brown has 33 years of professional experience, has given a countless amount of presentations, and is an excellent public speaker. Jody can attest to that. So we believe that there is nobody more qualified to speak with you today. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to utilize the chat, and time permitting, we'll try our best to cover all of them. And Mr. Brown, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Tab. Can you guys, I'm gonna see if I can switch to see you guys while you can see me as well. There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jay Brown, as Tabitha said. Tabitha, thanks for that introduction. So I don't need to share anything about my background professionally. You covered it all. So this is all about me personally. It's really great to learn about what Repicture is doing. And as I understand it, you guys are getting a whole series of presentation skills and training. And really what you wanted to hear from me was, how do you sort of prepare for your presentation? We talked about slides and whether to use slides. And as I thought about it, I really did not want to use slides. Having been doing this for so long, I really wanted to boil it down to what I thought were a few essentials that I've observed, not just for me, because mostly what I do is mimic what I see other people do over the years. I had a mentor that told me, just, when you see people that do great things, copy them. So have no concerns about copying what other people do. Just about everything I've done, I've learned by watching other people. But I wanted to boil the presentation down to a few things. And the first one that I think you guys may have talked about, but I didn't really put words to it until I was much further along in my career. And that is, you really have to make a connection. The most important thing about your presentation is you. It's not what you say, it's how you say it and whether you make a connection. When you think about all the times that you've left an interaction and you said, you felt something, like you felt moved, you felt enlightened, chances are it wasn't the substance of what you heard, it was the way in which it was delivered to you, the person smiling at you, looking in your eyes, sharing their passion with you. That was the most important thing about the presentation. So the first sort of point I want to make is that really think about, how do I make a personal connection in my presentation? It's hard right now during virtual, but you can do it even in virtual. One of the things that I learned, or I observed, I should say, early on, was that I loved being in people's homes during these presentations. I run a consulting firm, so I have to sell not only my expertise, I have to convince people to spend a lot of money, because I'm not cheap, a lot of money on my expertise, but at the same time, they have to feel comfortable with who this person is. And I felt being in people's homes actually made selling easier to me, because it brought us all down to a human level, and we didn't have to focus so much on gotta get the words right, gotta tell them the 50 things that I can do for them, but rather be a person that they're gonna wanna work with. Chances are your substance and your technical knowledge will kind of speak for itself, and it's not a differentiator because, anybody can figure stuff out technically, but not everybody can make you want to be around them and make you want to come back and talk more. So number one, make a personal connection. If you're virtual, I say get as close to the screen as you can. If you have an opportunity to pick on Jerry and that poster that she's got, and what does that poster mean? Just ways to connect, and not you guys are younger in your career, so you don't want to be too flip about it, right? If you're given you don't want to act like you are too comfortable. So you find a way to be who you are, really, which is a person that can connect on a human level. So number one, make a connection, make it all about you leaving an impression that somebody wants to spend time with you later. Number one. Number two, smile. I sort of grew up in an environment in South Central LA where I grew up. And back then, sort of the tough streets of South Central LA. And when I got out of the streets and had my first ever professional job, I had an internship at the IRS. And I had never been in an office building in my life. I was like 16 years old. I was in high school, the high school internship. And I never wore even like really dressy clothes. But I remember I was not smiling because where I grew up, a smile was a sense of weakness. A smile could get your butt kicked on the streets. So I had wired myself to not smile. And then someone mentioned to me in that very first internship, asked me to smile. And it was life-changing in a way, because I've learned over the years that a smile changes everything. Like you can really connect with people just by smiling. So I would just say, don't be afraid to smile during a presentation. It's okay. Like people want, and smile not just with your mouth, smile with your eyes and everything. Make people feel comfortable, and it works. Number two, smile. And then another thing about the smiling, especially if you are in a room with people, attention is hard to get these days. And I think that when you smile, give eye contact, sometimes you can even touch somebody properly and appropriately, like on the shoulder. It just helps to build a level of engagement in what you're saying that then keeps people focused on you. The focus is on you. It's a little scary because we all want the focus to be on that PowerPoint. We want the words on the page to be, because that's a little more comfortable. That doesn't get you where you want to be. The focus should be on you. The fewer the words on the page, the better. Keep them talking to you, keep them looking at you, keep them engaged with you, and smiling helps. I'm looking to the right because I wrote 4 points down that I want to add. The other thing I would say, spend really a lot of time on, to the extent you can, is just really knowing who your audience is. And that sounds easy enough, but what does that really mean? It means if you're going to be in a room with one person in an interview, go to that person's LinkedIn site, Google that person, find out everything you can about them, and use that information to, again, make a connection. Don't abuse it. Don't try to get too cute with it, and because you can be off-putting if you don't do it the right way. But learn as much as you can about them, not just professionally, but as much as you can personally. If you're in a room with 5 people making a presentation, always find out before you present, who am I talking to? And to the extent you can get any individual information, do it. You may not even incorporate it into your presentation, but having gone through that, if something comes up, it will allow you to give context that people can relate to, because you can give context to things that you kind of know about them. And let me give you an example. Just last week, we just won a big engagement with Vanderbilt University to help them with a utility concessionaire consulting agreement. We're working with Ernst & Young. And we had an interview with the chancellor and some of the senior executives. So I Googled the chancellor, found out everything. And lo and behold, I found out he's got an MPA degree, just like me. He's got twin boys, same age as my twin boys. He's got one of his twins is a senior year at NYU, just like one of my twins was in his senior year at NYU. I found like 5 things we had in common. And so when we had the conversation, I was able to talk about things and give context in ways that, you know, and I'm trying to be careful not to say, you know, just sort of just drop this stuff out there. You have to use it the right way. But there was a moment where I was able to, the conversation allowed me to mention my twins. And of course he said, oh, I have twins too. I already knew that, but okay. And then we spent a little bit of sidebar talking about NYU, because once he brought up the twins, you know, I knew he had a twin at NYU, so I brought up NYU. And needless to say, we got the work. Did that make us win the work? I don't know, but it certainly didn't hurt. So do your homework, know who you are talking to, spend that extra time, and not just for facts, but really try to think about them as a person, who they are. You're not going to be able to figure out what makes them tick, but you might find a few interesting things that you can relate to. That was number 3, know the audience. And then the very last thing is really about keeping it simple, guys. You know, I don't know. The one thing Tabitha didn't say about me is that I'm an engineer, because I am not. I am not a STEM person. I am a financial person. I'm okay with numbers, but I'm not an engineer. Hayat, who's our CEO, good friends with Jody on the line, my significant other, is an engineer. 21 out of the 28 employees we have in our company are engineers. And the hardest job I have is getting the engineers to keep it simple. They always want to give you all of the really impressive details about how they got from point A to point B, and it's really impressive. I'm blown away by their skills, but nobody wants to hear that stuff. Nobody wants to hear it. They just want to hear what time it is, not how the clock is made. Everybody's heard that term before. You need to do that in your presentations as well. Leave all the details to the back. If somebody has a detailed question, whip that thing out, boom, I got it. And they'll be impressed. Do not lead with that detail. Keep it really, really simple. If you can't explain, now, what you guys do is very impressive. Some of it's even rocket science. I was gonna say it's not rocket science, but some of it could be pretty close to rocket science. But you have to be able to explain it to somebody who doesn't understand it like you, and have it make sense to them. Have it connect to them on a level that they understand. And oftentimes you have different levels in a room. Really, people who are your peers technically, and then people who are not all that savvy. Play to the lowest common denominator. The technical people will always show you how smart they are and ask you a detailed question, and you're ready for that. Boom. But simplify it. Keep it simple. And so, there's practical ways to do that. I know I really only had like 20 minutes to kind of chat with you guys, but I really wanted to leave a lot of time for back and forth and to ask and answer any questions you guys have. So sum it up real quick. Number 1, personal connection. Number 2, smile. Number 3, know your audience. And number 4, keep it simple. If you do those things, you're going to be an awesome presenter. And if you start practicing now at this level you guys are at, oh my God, I could take over a small country. You guys are going to be fantastic. That's my spiel.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I love that advice about smiling and making a connection with people. I think that's such an underrated aspect of presenting. And I know when I do that myself, it makes me more comfortable. So, Yeah, love that advice. So again, to all of the students, if you want to ask a question, you can just put it in the chat or you can direct chat me. But to start off, um, what do you think is the simplest thing that you can do to just elevate your presentation, whether it's about you specifically, how you're speaking, or maybe even preparing your presentation? Just the simplest thing.
Yeah, I think the simplest thing you can do is start by focusing on making a connection on a human level to the people you're talking to. Don't dive right into the details of the analysis. I think that's one of the things that we don't often spend enough time just doing. How do I start this conversation off in a way that sort of makes everybody comfortable and puts the focus on me and not on my presentation. And so I think that's the simplest thing you can do. And then just, less words, a lot of white space. If you're using slides, a lot of white space. If I have to actually focus on your slide, it's not a good slide. If I want to focus on you, you want your audience to focus on you. If they have to spend time reading your slide, then you haven't succeeded. So don't feel you have to have a lot of stuff on the page. Make it about you.
Great, yeah, thank you. So another question, when you first started presenting, did you initially feel comfortable talking, or did you do something to get yourself to the point where you do feel comfortable now?
Boy, it's been so long. I don't remember when I started. I think, actually, I can tell you the very first real public meeting. I was not a public meeting, but what I would call a presentation. I was a junior in college, and I had a job with the City Club. And I was just basically administrator. I was just taking notes and keeping up the meetings. So they asked me to present to them my observations of the meeting in the following meeting. I was scared to death. I had never been in front of a bunch of people and had presented, and a bunch of professionals. But what I found was, as long as I knew what I was talking about, it wasn't that bad. So I would say, just make sure you really know what you're talking. The most confidence you get is from knowing what you're talking about. That doesn't mean focus on saying all these smart things, but just be confident that you can handle any question, and also be confident in not having an answer to a question. It's okay to not have an answer to it. And once I got comfortable with that concept, that, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I'm not here presenting, something that I'm not comfortable with. I know more about that than just about anybody in the room. So I'm in a better position. So I sort of thought about it like that. I know more about this topic that I'm talking about than any of you. So therefore I'm cool. And if I don't know it, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. The other thing that really helped, I did a lot of TAing when I was in college. I was an economics major. And I found that teaching other people one-on-one really, really elevated my ability to communicate things in a way that was understandable to people. And that really helped me along the way. So if you have opportunities while you're in college to do any teaching assistant, I think that was actually a really solid foundation for me to begin to take complicated concepts, like at that time, economic theory, and explain it to somebody who was just trying to get there. And I've used that same sort of concept throughout my whole career, taking complicated stuff and trying to explain it to somebody who really is not an expert in it. But means you got to know what you're saying to be able to break it down in those fundamental terms.
Right. And I guess a question that's kind of similar to that is, if you could give advice to somebody who is in high school or college about presenting, what would it be? And I guess you did kind of talk about the college aspect, but maybe somebody in high school who hasn't had the opportunity yet to go ahead and get that TA position.
I would say find any opportunities for engagement on any level. If you are, and engaging in topics that may not be as comfortable for you, right? I don't mean just engage with your friends about the latest, what's happening, but get out of your comfort zone. If you're in high school, get with a group that may be exploring a particular club, and I never joined a club, so I'm a little out of school, but I regret not having done that because I could have had those opportunities for engagement early on. Actually, I don't think we had clubs at the high school I went to in South Central anyway, so never mind that. But in any opportunities you have to really just engage, and I would say more adult engagement too, like anything, whether you're volunteering at a political event or doing some other, just put yourself in an adult environment where you have to engage and talk to not your peers, but to others. I think that would be just great training. And then as you get more professional opportunities, even in high school, take those. And so that's what I would say. Just use every opportunity just to engage. And eventually you'll be so comfortable, it'll be second nature.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I know for myself, just working in customer service, like working in restaurants definitely boosted my confidence in that way, like really just getting out there and engaging with people. So yeah, that's awesome advice. So I think we have
and
go ahead.
I want to say, Tabitha, I noticed that about it. So for the rest of you on the line, I've been engaging with Tabitha since, getting prepared for this. And I have to say, you come across in a way that a lot of, folks at your stage don't. And so I'm glad you're attributing it to the simple things like working in the service industry. And I did too. I worked in restaurants, I worked in liquor store in LA, liquor store, but every job I had before I became a professional was in the service industry. And I think that helped a lot. So, don't take those things for granted. You can grow in just about any job, but I noticed that about you though, Tabitha. So, well
Thank
done.
you. I really appreciate that. So yeah, I guess we have time for maybe one or two more questions. When do you think it's appropriate to use like slides or visuals? I noticed that you didn't today, but in what situation would you think that those would work better?
I think if you have to show a process, a slide helps, because people can't visualize a process in a conversation and they can't retain a process. So a picture to demonstrate a process is great. Steps, steps in a procedure, steps in a calculation. If you have to do stuff like that, I think, a slide is fine. Slides that are just words explaining something like what I talked about, like everything we talked about today did not need a slide. If anything, if I was really creative, I would have had really cool little video clips of people doing the type of stuff that I'm explaining, but I'm not that creative. I would maybe use something like that. But as far as really PowerPoint slides, processes, steps, procedures, not sort of this kind of dialogue. That's my suggestion.
All right, wonderful. And then last question, what is the main mistake that you see when you see other people presenting, and what advice would you give to fix that or to avoid that?
Interestingly enough, I think the main mistake I see is people not doing the 4 things that I suggested to you guys today. They think that the presentation is all about the topic, and so they just bore the heck out of people that are, even people who know the topic or are interested in the topic, have no interest in hearing it come from somebody that is just essentially just, mouthing something that I could go and figure out on my own. So I think the biggest mistake is people don't understand the importance of the personal connection and the personal engagement during the presentation, and making that a wholesome part of the presentation. So great slides, a lot of good content. Should have been a report that you should have given to me, because I didn't need you to present it, and because I didn't connect with you. So what's the point of the presentation? I can consume that information on my iPhone. So I think that's the biggest mistake they made. They forget about the connection.
All right, well, great. Thank you again for spending time with us today. I know I learned a lot. So I'm going to hand it over to Lynn for the rest of the time that we have here, and she's going to give our students some details about our assignment this week.
Thank you, Tabitha, and thanks everybody for putting up with me for 20 minutes.
Thanks, Jay. That was so helpful. I really appreciate it. That was
My
really
pleasure.
great. Thank you.
I'm going to sign off. Is that okay?
It sure is. Thanks again.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.